Good afternoon, students.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
I'm
Good
audible, right?
afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to start with PSM practicals. Okay. In the last class, we discussed on pulse. Right, vital signs. We discussed on pulse. We discussed on definition of pulse. Then cardiac output was discussed. That cardiac output. What is the formula for cardiac output? What was the formula for cardiac output? Nobody knows? Mayborn? Birgrishri, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what was the formula for cardiac output?
Hello, ma'am.
Say.
Yeah.
Say fast, Birgrishri. You're muted. You unmute yourself.
Ma'am, I cannot hear properly.
Quiet. Say it. Yes, say. What was the formula for cardiac output? What was the formula? Singni Suchiang, do you know? What was the
Cardiac output equal to stroke volume
into stroke volume into
into
pulse
pulse
rate?
rate.
Okay. And what are the characteristics of pulse? ठीक है Asina, characteristics of pulse?
Rate, rhythm, volume, tension, and
Equality. And what are the factors causing variation in pulse rate? What were the factors? What are the factors? Factors causing variation in pulse rate. What are they?
Age, sex, exercise, pain, anxiety, education, hemorrhage, and position.
And position. Okay. And you tell me pulse rate. Okay, in position only. Pulse rate is higher in standing or sitting position.
Higher, ma'am.
In
Higher.
Higher in which position? Sitting or standing?
Standing position.
Standing. Okay. And again, pulse rate will be higher in sitting or else lying down position.
Higher in sitting position.
Okay, sitting position. And when there will be increased amount of blood loss. Okay, when the blood loss is too much, that time the pulse rate will increase or it will decrease. Excessive blood loss will lead to increase or decrease pulse rate. Say fast, it will increase or decrease? Jiban, do you know? Manisha Kumari?
Increase.
It will increase. Okay. So now you write down rhythm. RHYTHM, rhythm. Write down rhythm. RHYTHM, rhythm. Underline it and then you write, it is the pattern of the pulsation. It is the rhythm of the pulsation. PULSATION. It is the pattern of the pulsation and the pause. PAUSE, pause. Pulsation and the pause. PAUSE, pause between them. Pulsation and the pause between them. Full stop. If the pulse beat, if the pulse beat is missed or late, if the pulse beat is missed, MISSED, if the pulse beat is missed or late, LAT, late, missed or late, comma, the individual is suffering from this arrhythmia, DYS RHYTHMIA, this arrhythmia, DYS RHYTHMIA, this arrhythmia, this arrhythmia. This arrhythmia, full stop. The variations of rhythm are RHYTHM. The variations of rhythm are. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. After the variations of rhythms are, you write after that, make this table and write down rhythm, and in the other side you write nature, and you copy this in your notebook. Here I have written double T, okay, it is a typing mistake. It will be only single T. ARRHYTHMIA. Don't write H, okay? T, this one is double. ARRHYTHMIA, arrhythmia. So these are the variations of rhythm, that is intermittent, irregular or arrhythmia. Then there will be extra systole, then sinus arrhythmia. So in intermittent, what will happen? Pulse that occasionally misses a cardiac beat. Sometimes the pulse beat is missed occasionally. Okay, it is known as intermittent rhythm. Irregular or arrhythmia, uneven heartbeat, irregular heartbeat, sometimes irregular, too fast or too slow. Sometimes when you check the pulse beat, what happens? The patient suffers from very fast heartbeat, or sometimes the pulse beat is so slow. Okay, that in a minute you will be able to see that the pulse rate is very slow and it is lesser than the normal value. So it is known as irregular or arrhythmia. Next is extra systole, essentially extra beats or contraction. Whenever there is an extra beat, okay, It is known as extrasystole. Last is sinus arrhythmia. In this, what will happen? Pulse rate is rapid during inspiration and slow during expiration. Whenever you inspire or whenever you inhale oxygen, at that time the pulse rate will be very rapid. Okay. Then when you expire, when you give out, when you exhale carbon dioxide, at that time the pulse rate will gradually decrease or it will become a bit slow, and that is known as sinus arrhythmia. So these are the 4 variations of rhythm. You copy it. And don't forget, it is ARRHYTHMIA. My mistake, I wrote double T. So you write properly. Finish writing. Have you finished writing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So these are the 4 variations. Okay, intermittent arrhythmia, extrasystole, and the sinus arrhythmia. Next, you write down volume or pulse amplitude. Next, you write volume, VOLUME, volume or pulse amplitude, AMPITUD, volume or pulse amplitude. Volume or pulse amplitude, AMPLITUDE. Write down. It refers to the fullness of the artery. It refers, underline it and you write. It refers to the fullness of the artery. It refers to the fullness of the artery. It refers to the fullness of the artery, which reflects the strength of the, which reflects the strength of the, which reflects the strength of the ventricular contraction. Strength of the ventricular, VENTRICULAR, ventricular contraction, CONTRACTION, ventricular contraction, full stop. In normal condition, comma, in normal condition, comma, the volume of each pulse beat, the volume of each pulse beat in normal condition, the volume of each pulse beat is strong. Pulse beat is strong, S-T-R-O-N-G, is strong at all the areas, strong at all the areas, strong at all the areas where the artery can be palpated, where the artery can be palpated, where the artery can be palpated, P-L-P-A-T-E, palpated, full stop. Okay, so volume or pulse amplitude, what you have written that it refers to the fullness of the artery, okay, which reflects the strength of the ventricular condition, full stop, in normal condition, comma, the volume of each pulse beat is strong at all the areas where the artery can be palpated. Where the arteries can be palpated, okay, at that place, the volume of each pulse beat is very strong. Like for example, your radial pulse, okay, the pulse felt just on your wrist, where you put your wristwatch, there the pulse beat is very strong and it can be palpated easily. You can easily feel the pulse beat. Okay, so at that place also, the volume of pulse beat is strong. Next, is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
After that, you write this. Volume or pulse amplitude. Write this page, okay? Volume or pulse amplitude. Write down the types and the characteristics. Types: absent pulse, water hammer pulse, or collapsing pulse, or Corrigan pulse. So water hammer pulse is the other name is collapsing pulse and also Corrigan pulse. Next is the bounding pulse, thready pulse, weak pulse, and the biterminal pulse. So these are some of the types of pulse amplitude. So in absent pulse, what do you see? That no pulse is felt. This despite extreme pressure also, the pulse is not felt in the patient. For example, if a person goes suddenly to stroke, or else if the person dies, at that time also we will feel no pulse. So that is known as absent pulse, where the pulse is completely not felt. Okay, even after giving pressure also, there is no pulse felt on the patient. That is known as absent pulse. Water hammer pulse or collapsing pulse or the Corrigan pulse. Pulse that is bounding and forceful, rapidly increasing and subsequently collapsing. Whenever the pulse beat rapidly increases or else it collapses, it is known as the Corrigan pulse. In bounding pulse, the pulse beat is very strong, okay, throbbing felt over one of the arteries which does not disappear with moderate pressure. Even when you give pressure on the side of that pulse, what happens? There is a pain felt on that area, okay, because there is a strong pulsation felt on that specific area and it does not even disappear, okay, it remains for some time. So that is known as bounding pulse. In thready pulse, a small fine pulse feeling like a small cord or thread under the fingers. Okay, whenever you try to feel the pulse, at that time you will feel like as if you are touching a thread. You know na thread? Okay, just like a thread, the pulse is felt in a very small, fine lines are felt when you try to feel the pulse of that patient. That's why the name is given as thready. Thready means thread-like. Okay. Next is weak pulse. In weak pulse, the pulse rate will go down. It will gradually decrease. and it will also be very slow. When you try to feel the pulse beat will be very slow. Okay, but still it will be a bit stronger than the steady pulse. Bigeminal pulse characterized by two beats close together with a pause following each pair of beats. In this, you will feel two types of pulses being felt on the arteries. Okay, and sometimes it also gives a pause. You feel the pulse, again after some time you feel that there is absent pulse. You won't feel any pulse of the patient. Again after some time you feel the pulse. So that is known as the bigeminal. Bi means double, two types, two. Okay, so that is known as bigeminal pulse, where two beats are felt. So you write this. Finish writing. Yes or no? Finish writing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Write it down properly, okay, in your practical notebook. Next, you write down tension. T-E-N-S-I-O-N, tension. Write down tension. Tension, put a dash and write. Tension. Tension corresponds. Tension corresponds. C-O-R-R-E-S-P-O-N-D-S. Tension corresponds to the diastolic blood pressure. Tension corresponds to the diastolic, D-I-A-S-T-O-L-I-C. D-I-A-S-T-O-L-I-C. Tension corresponds to the diastolic blood pressure. Full stop. It is high. It is high. It is high when the artery is difficult to. It is high when the artery is difficult to. It is high when the artery is difficult to. Difficult to compress. C-O-M-P-R-E-S-S. Difficult to compress, comma. Blood vessels feels rigid. Blood vessels feels rigid, R-I-G-I-D, rigid, even between the pulse beat. Even between the pulse beat. Full stop. It is slow, full stop. It is slow, LW. It is slow. It is low when the arteries is. It is low when the arteries is. When the artery is easily compressed. It is low when the arteries are easily compressed. When the arteries are easily compressed. Comma, a low tension pulse, comma, a low tension pulse, a low tension pulse, TNSION, a low tension pulse. In low tension pulse, the blood vessel is soft, SOFT, soft or impalpable, IMPALPABLE, soft or impalpable between the pulse beat, between the pulse beat. Next you write down equality. The last one is equality. EQUALITY, equality. Equality. Write down. Pulse equality refers to Pulse equality refers to whether the pulse force is whether WHETHER, whether the pulse force is comparable on both sides of the body. Pulse force is comparable on both sides of the body. Both sides of the body. Full stop. An example लिखा. For example, palpate the radial pulse on the right and left wrist. For example, palpate, P-A-L-P-A-T, palpate the radial pulse. Palpate the radial pulse. Palpate the radial pulse on the right and left wrist. On the right and left wrist. On the right and left wrist. At the same time, and compare, COMPARE, and compare whether the pulse force is equal or not. Whether the pulse force is equal or not. Full stop. Okay. So in equality, what you have written that it measures the pulse force on both sides. Okay. Like in your radial pulse, both right and left hand, when you try to find out the pulse rate of both the radial pulse felt on the wrist, you have to find out whether at the same time the pulse force is equal, uneven or even. So that is known as equality of pulse. So in the next class, we will discuss on signs of taking pulse. Okay. Signs, I think I have given you one diagram. the 9 sites I've given you, but we will need to know one by one where it is located. Okay, the location in the body, we have to know it. So that portion I will take in the next class, and then it will be the pulse chapter will be over with that, and we can start with blood pressure after that. Okay. Many of you are absent. Many of the students are absent. You please inform them that if there are many of you, your attendance is very low. Mayborn also. You joined today, but your attendance is very low. And this time it is a strict order that whoever's attendance is below 80%, you will not be allowed to sit for the test. So you be serious about that. And very soon you will be coming for offline classes. So if you do the same thing, it will be a problem. Okay, thank you.
Ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.